She agreed to marry a feared mountain man to save her little sister's life, but what she discovered on their wedding night shattered everything she believed. His scars hid a secret that could change both their lives forever. The winter of 1887 arrived early in the Colorado mountains. Snow covered the rooftops of Silver Creek, a struggling mining town where survival was never guaranteed. 21-year-old Abigail Harper stood outside the general store, clutching a worn basket against her chest. The icy wind cut through her thin coat, but she barely noticed. Her thoughts were consumed by one thing. Her younger sister, Emma. Emma had been sick for months. The town doctor said she needed expensive medicine brought from Denver. Without it, her condition would only worsen. Abigail had already sold nearly everything they owned. Their mother's necklace, their father's watch, even their small piece of farmland. Still, it wasn't enough. The debt collector, Victor Blackwood, knew it. And he enjoyed reminding her. As Abigail stepped onto the snowy road, a deep voice stopped her. "Miss Harper." She froze. Victor Blackwood approached, dressed in an expensive black coat. He smiled. The kind of smile that made her uneasy. "Have you brought my money?" Abigail swallowed hard. "You know I don't have it yet." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Then your deadline has arrived." Fear tightened in her chest. "Please. Just one more month." Victor shook his head. "No more extensions." Abigail's heart sank. Then his expression changed. A strange smile appeared. "There may be another option." She instantly disliked the sound of that. "What option?" Victor looked toward the distant mountains. "The mountain man." Abigail frowned. Everyone in Silver Creek had heard stories. A giant recluse who lived alone deep in the mountains. Some called him a savage. Others claimed he had killed men. Nobody knew the truth. Most people simply feared him. His name was Ethan Wolfe. Victor continued. "Ethan needs a wife." Abigail stared at him. "What does that have to do with me?" Victor's smile widened. "He has agreed to pay every cent of your debt." The realization hit her like ice water. "No." Victor shrugged. "Then your sister loses the house." Abigail's hands trembled. "You can't be serious." "I am." He stepped closer. "Marry Ethan Wolfe, and your debt disappears." The world suddenly felt smaller. Colder. More terrifying. She had never even spoken to Ethan. Only heard stories. Dark stories. Stories of scars and violence. Stories of a man nobody dared approach. Victor handed her a folded paper. "The wedding is in 3 days." Abigail stared at him in disbelief. "You arranged this already. I was confident you'd make the right choice." Then he walked away, leaving her standing alone in the snow. That evening Abigail sat beside Emma's bed. The small cabin felt colder than usual. Emma's face looked pale beneath the candlelight. She coughed softly. Concern filled Abigail's heart. "Abby." Emma's weak voice broke the silence. "What's wrong?" Abigail forced a smile. "Nothing." Emma wasn't fooled. "You never lie very well." Abigail looked away. Tears threatened to form. Finally, she told her everything. The debt. Victor's offer. The marriage. Emma's eyes widened. "No." Abigail nodded slowly. "It's the only way." Emma grabbed her hand. "You can't marry a stranger because of me." Abigail squeezed her fingers. "I can." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. "No. I won't lose you." The room fell silent. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally Emma whispered. "What if the stories are true?" Abigail looked toward the frosted window. Toward the mountains. Toward the unknown. "I don't know." And that terrified her most. 3 days later, the wedding arrived. The entire town gathered. Not because they wished the couple happiness. Because they wanted to witness the spectacle. Whispers followed Abigail everywhere. "Poor girl. She doesn't know what she's getting into. That mountain man is dangerous." The church doors opened. Then silence spread across the room. Ethan Wolfe entered. He was enormous. At least 6'4". Broad shoulders. Dark beard. A long scar stretched across one side of his face. Gasps echoed through the church. Abigail's heart pounded. He looked exactly like the rumors described. Intimidating. Powerful. Dangerous. Yet something felt different. He wasn't glaring at anyone. He wasn't acting aggressive. Instead, he seemed uncomfortable. Almost reluctant to be there. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, Abigail noticed something unexpected. Sadness. Deep sadness. Then the moment passed. The ceremony began. The preacher spoke. The crowd watched. Abigail barely heard a word. Everything felt unreal. When the vows were exchanged, Ethan's voice remained calm, steady, respectful. Not once did he force her gaze. Not once did he touch her unnecessarily. Soon the ceremony ended, and Abigail Harper became Abigail Wolf. The journey to Ethan's cabin took hours. The mountains grew steeper, the roads narrower. Eventually civilization disappeared behind them. Only snow-covered forests remained. The cabin finally appeared near sunset. It was larger than Abigail expected. Strong timber walls, a sturdy stone chimney, fresh firewood stacked outside. Everything appeared well maintained. Ethan climbed down from the wagon, then extended his hand. Abigail hesitated, before finally accepting. His grip was surprisingly gentle. Inside, the cabin felt warm, comfortable. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The scent of pine filled the air. It wasn't the dark, frightening place she'd imagined. Ethan set her bags near the stairs, then cleared his throat. "You're probably hungry." Abigail blinked. That wasn't what she expected him to say. "I can make supper." He shook his head. "It's already prepared." Prepared? She followed him into the kitchen. Her eyes widened. A full meal sat waiting. Fresh bread, stew, roasted vegetables. Abigail looked at him. "You cooked this?" Ethan nodded. She didn't know what to say. Nothing matched the stories. Nothing. As they ate, silence filled the room. Not awkward silence, just unfamiliar silence. Finally Ethan spoke. "You don't have to be afraid of me." Abigail nearly dropped her spoon. He had read her thoughts perfectly. He looked into the fire. "I know what people say." His voice sounded tired. "They've been saying it for years." Abigail studied him carefully. The scar, the powerful frame, the quiet sadness. Something didn't fit. Something hidden beneath the surface. Before she could ask, Ethan stood. "Your room is upstairs." She frowned. "My room?" "Yes." Confusion crossed her face. "What about yours?" He pointed toward a small room downstairs. "I sleep there." Abigail stared. Realization slowly formed. He wasn't expecting to share a room. He wasn't demanding anything. Ethan noticed her confusion, then said something she never expected. "This marriage was your sacrifice." His voice softened. "I won't make it harder than it already is." Abigail stood speechless. Every frightening expectation she'd carried into the mountains suddenly began to crumble. Who was this man? And why did he seem nothing like the monster everyone feared? Later that night, unable to sleep, Abigail walked downstairs. The fire still glowed softly. Moonlight filtered through the windows. Then she noticed something. A wooden box beside Ethan's desk. Partially open. Curiosity drew her closer. Inside were dozens of letters, carefully tied together. Many looked old, worn, loved. One envelope rested on top. Abigail picked it up, then froze. The handwriting looked familiar. Very familiar. Her eyes widened, because the name written across the front wasn't Ethan Wolf. It was her father's. And in that moment, Abigail realized her marriage to the mysterious mountain man might not have been an accident at all. The letters hidden in the mountain cabin. Abigail agreed to marry the feared mountain man, Ethan Wolf, to save her younger sister. But on her first night in his cabin, she discovered a box filled with old letters, including one addressed to her late father. Now she's about to uncover a secret that connects her family to Ethan in ways she never imagined. Abigail's hands trembled as she stared at the envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to her father, Thomas Harper, the same father who had died 6 years ago in a mining accident. For a moment, she wondered if she was imagining things. Slowly, she pulled the letter from the envelope. Before she could unfold it, a floorboard creaked behind her. She spun around. Ethan stood near the staircase. His expression wasn't angry. It was worried. For several seconds neither spoke. Finally, Ethan sighed. "You found them." Abigail held up the letter. "Why do you have my father's letters?" The fire crackled softly between them. Ethan looked toward the box. Then toward her. "Because your father was my friend." Abigail felt the room spin. "My father never mentioned you." A shadow crossed Ethan's face. "He wouldn't." "Why?" Ethan walked slowly toward the fireplace. For a long moment he remained silent. Then he spoke. "Because I asked him not to." Abigail frowned. Nothing made sense. "My father knew you." Ethan nodded. "Better than anyone." She stared at him. Then tell me the truth. The mountain man's eyes met hers. And for the first time since they'd met, he began telling the story he'd hidden for years. 12 years earlier, Ethan Wolf had not been a recluse. He had lived in Silver Creek, worked in the mines, laughed with friends, dreamed about building a family. Among those friends was Thomas Harper, Abigail's father. The two men had been inseparable, like brothers. Then tragedy struck. One winter evening, a tunnel collapsed deep inside the mine. Dozens of workers became trapped, including Thomas Harper, including Ethan Wolf. The cave-in left them buried underground for nearly 2 days. Ethan still remembered every second. The darkness, the fear, the screams, and the fire. A lantern had exploded during the collapse. Flames spread through the tunnel. Ethan managed to pull several men to safety, including Thomas, but not before suffering terrible burns across his face and shoulders. The scars changed everything. Afterward, people looked at him differently. Children became frightened. Strangers whispered. Women avoided him. Eventually Ethan stopped coming into town. Stopped attending church. Stopped visiting friends. Except one. Thomas Harper. He never judged me, Ethan said quietly. He never treated me differently. Abigail felt tears forming. That sounded exactly like her father. He was a good man. Ethan nodded. The best man I've ever known. The room fell silent. Then Abigail asked the question haunting her. If you were friends, why didn't you come after he died? Pain flashed across Ethan's face. I tried. Abigail frowned. What do you mean? Ethan reached into the box. Then handed her another letter. She unfolded it carefully. The date stunned her. It had been written 1 week before her father's death. Her eyes moved across the page. And her heart nearly stopped. Dear Ethan, if anything happens to me, promise you'll watch over Abigail and Emma. Victor Blackwood has been trying to take our land for years. I don't trust him. If I'm gone, they'll have no one. Please protect them. Your friend, Thomas Harper. Abigail stared at the letter. Her chest tightened. Victor Blackwood. Even then, her father had been worried about him. Why didn't I ever see this? She whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. Because after your father's death, Victor made sure nobody could get close to your family. Abigail looked up sharply. What are you saying? Ethan stepped closer. I don't believe your father's death was an accident. The words hit her like thunder. For a moment she couldn't breathe. That's impossible. Maybe. But I've spent 6 years investigating. Abigail stared at him. You investigated? Ethan nodded. I owed him that much. Her heart pounded. What did you find? Ethan hesitated. Then opened a small drawer. Inside lay a stack of papers. Mine reports. Financial records. Witness statements. Documents carefully collected over years. Abigail's hands shook as she examined them. One name appeared again and again. Victor Blackwood. The same man who now controlled most of Silver Creek. The same man who forced her into this marriage. The same man her father had feared. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains. Inside, Abigail's world changed forever. Everything she believed about Ethan had been wrong. The town had painted him as a monster. But he had secretly spent years protecting her family. Watching from a distance. Keeping his promise to her father. Even paying off her debt. Not because he wanted a wife. Because he wanted to save her. The realization left her speechless. Ethan looked away. You should get some sleep. Abigail didn't move. Why? He frowned. Why what? Why marry me? His expression darkened. For a moment he seemed unsure how to answer. Finally he spoke. Because Victor was running out of patience. Abigail listened carefully. If I hadn't stepped in. He paused. Then continued. I was afraid he'd force you into something much worse. Tears filled Abigail's eyes. For the first time, she saw the truth. Ethan hadn't purchased a wife. He had rescued her. The next morning, Abigail woke early. Sunlight reflected off the snow-covered mountains. For the first time since arriving, she felt calm. Safe. She walked downstairs. The cabin was quiet. Too quiet. Then she noticed something strange. The front door stood open. Cold air rushed inside. Ethan. No answer. A knot formed in her stomach. She stepped outside. Fresh footprints marked the snow. Dozens of them. Not one set. Many. Fear surged through her. Someone had come during the night. Suddenly she spotted movement near the tree line. A wounded horse stumbled into view. Without a rider. Strapped to its saddle was a torn piece of cloth. Abigail recognized it instantly. It belonged to Ethan's coat. And beneath it was a folded note. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The message contained only 6 terrifying words. Stay away, or he's dead. Abigail's blood ran cold. Someone had taken Ethan. And deep down, she already knew who was responsible. Victor Blackwood. The kidnapping of the mountain man. Abigail discovered that Ethan Wolfe had been her late father's closest friend and had secretly protected her family for years. But just as she began trusting him, he vanished. Outside the cabin, she found a chilling note. Stay away, or he's dead. Now Abigail must risk everything to save the man she once feared. The note trembled in Abigail's hands. The cold mountain wind whipped through her hair, but she barely felt it. Her heart pounded violently. Someone had taken Ethan, and there was only one person cruel enough to do it. Victor Blackwood. Abigail looked toward the distant town of Silver Creek. The mountains suddenly seemed much larger. Much more dangerous. But she wasn't turning back. Not this time. For years she had lived in fear. Fear of debt. Fear of losing Emma. Fear of powerful men like Victor. That fear ended today. She hurried into the cabin and gathered supplies. A heavy coat. A rifle. A lantern. The papers Ethan had collected. If something happened to him, she might need proof. Within minutes she saddled Ethan's strongest horse. The animal snorted nervously, almost as if it sensed trouble ahead. Abigail climbed into the saddle. Then rode hard toward Silver Creek. The journey took most of the day. Snow covered the mountain trails. Several times the horse nearly slipped. But Abigail refused to slow down. Every minute mattered. As the sun began setting behind the peaks, Silver Creek finally appeared in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys. Lanterns glowed along the streets. At first glance everything seemed normal. But Abigail noticed something strange. People avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when she passed. Fear hung over the town. The same fear Ethan had spoken about. The same fear her father must have known. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Her first stop was the doctor's office. Emma sat beside the fireplace when Abigail entered. The young girl's face brightened immediately. Abby. They embraced tightly. For a moment Abigail forgot about everything else. Then Emma noticed her expression. What happened? Abigail told her about Ethan's disappearance. Emma's face turned pale. Victor took him. I think so. Emma lowered her voice. Then you need to see Sheriff Collins. Abigail frowned. The sheriff. Emma nodded. He came here yesterday asking questions about Ethan. That surprised her. Sheriff Collins rarely asked questions about anything. Especially not Victor Blackwood. Still, it was the only lead she had. The sheriff's office sat near the center of town. When Abigail entered, Sheriff Collins looked genuinely shocked. Mrs. Wolfe. Abigail ignored the title. Ethan's been kidnapped. The sheriff's expression immediately darkened. I was afraid of that. Abigail blinked. You knew. Collins sighed heavily. Then closed the office door. Sit down. Something in his voice made Abigail nervous. Very nervous. She obeyed. The sheriff removed a bottle from his desk. Poured himself coffee. Then looked directly at her. Your father didn't die in an accident. Abigail froze. The exact words Ethan had spoken. You know. Collins nodded. I've known for years. Anger surged through her. Then why didn't you do anything? The sheriff looked ashamed. Because I couldn't prove it. Abigail slammed her hand on the desk. But you knew. His voice cracked. Victor owns half this town. The room fell silent. Then Collins opened a drawer. Inside lay an old journal. He slid it across the desk. This belonged to your father. Abigail's eyes widened. My father's journal. The sheriff nodded. We found it after his death. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Page after page contained notes. Observations. Names. Dates. Evidence. The deeper she read, the colder she felt. Her father had uncovered a massive scheme. Victor Blackwood had been stealing money from mining investors. Falsifying records. Bribing officials. Threatening witnesses. And Thomas Harper had discovered everything. The final journal entry was written only hours before his death. Abigail read it aloud. I finally have enough proof. Tomorrow I meet Sheriff Collins. If anything happens to me, Victor Blackwood is responsible. Tears filled her eyes. The words blurred. Victor had murdered her father. She knew it. Now the sheriff knew it too. A sudden gunshot exploded outside. Boom. The office windows rattled. Abigail jumped to her feet. Another shot followed. Then screaming. People ran through the streets. Sheriff Collins grabbed his rifle. Stay behind me. They rushed outside. Chaos filled Silver Creek. Men on horseback raced through town. Armed men. Victor's men. One rider stopped near the center square. He threw something onto the snow. Then rode away. The crowd gathered nervously. Abigail pushed forward. Her stomach twisted. The object lying in the snow was Ethan's rifle. And attached to it was another note. Sheriff Collins picked it up. His face immediately turned grim. What does it say? The sheriff hesitated. Then handed it to her. Abigail read the words. Bring the journal to Iron Ridge Mine at midnight. Come alone, or Ethan dies. The crowd slowly dispersed. Darkness settled over Silver Creek. Abigail sat quietly inside the sheriff's office. The journal rested in her lap. She stared at the fire. Thinking, planning, worrying. Sheriff Collins finally broke the silence. It's a trap. I know. You can't go alone. I know. Then don't. Abigail looked up. Her eyes filled with determination. If Victor killed my father. She paused. And if Ethan is risking his life because he protected us. Her voice hardened. Then I'm ending this tonight. The sheriff studied her carefully. For the first time, he smiled. She reminded him of Thomas Harper. Brave, stubborn, unwilling to back down. Exactly like her father. Just before midnight, Abigail approached Iron Ridge Mine. The abandoned mine sat deep in the hills outside town. Moonlight reflected off the snow. Everything was silent. Too silent. She carried the journal beneath her coat. Every shadow felt threatening. Every sound made her heart race. Then she saw a light ahead. Lanterns. Several of them. And standing beside the mine entrance. Victor Blackwood. He smiled when he saw her. The same cold smile she had always hated. Right on time. Abigail clenched her fists. Where's Ethan? Victor chuckled. Always straight to business. Several armed men emerged from the darkness. Surrounding her. Victor stepped closer. Give me the journal. Abigail didn't move. Show me Ethan first. Victor's smile faded. Then he nodded. Two men dragged someone from the mine entrance. Bruised. Bloodied. But alive. Ethan Wolfe. Their eyes met. Relief flooded through Abigail. But only for a second. Because Ethan suddenly shouted, Abigail, run. At that exact moment, a loud explosion erupted deep inside the mine. The ground shook violently. Rocks crashed from above. Men screamed. And the entire mountainside began collapsing. Trapped beneath the mountain, Victor Blackwood kidnapped Ethan and lured Abigail to the abandoned Iron Ridge Mine. Just as Ethan warned her to run, a massive explosion shook the mountain. Now rocks are falling, the mine is collapsing, and survival itself has become uncertain. The explosion thundered through the valley. The ground split beneath Abigail's feet. Men screamed as boulders crashed from above. A cloud of dust swallowed everything. For several terrifying seconds, Abigail couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't even think. Then something slammed into her. Strong arms wrapped around her body, protecting her, shielding her from the falling debris. Ethan. A massive beam crashed where she had been standing only moments earlier. The earth continued shaking. More rocks tumbled from the mountainside. Ethan. Abigail cried. I'm here. His voice sounded strained. The dust slowly settled. Abigail blinked. They were trapped inside a narrow section of the mine. A wall of fallen stone blocked the entrance. Moonlight had vanished. Only darkness remained. For several moments neither moved. Both listened. The mountain groaned around them. Finally Ethan lit a lantern. Its weak glow revealed the damage. The tunnel behind them had collapsed. The entrance was completely sealed. Abigail's stomach tightened. We're trapped. Ethan studied the rubble. Maybe. The answer wasn't comforting. But it wasn't hopeless either. That mattered. Nearby, faint cries echoed through the darkness. Victor's men. Some injured. Some trapped. Others already fleeing through deeper tunnels. Then silence returned. Abigail noticed blood running down Ethan's forehead. You're hurt. It's nothing. It doesn't look like nothing. Ethan gave a small smile. I've had worse. She carefully cleaned the wound using a cloth from her pocket. For a moment their eyes met. The lantern light softened the harsh lines of his scarred face. And for the first time, Abigail saw something she'd never noticed before. Kindness. Not fear. Not danger. Kindness. She quickly looked away, her heart suddenly beating faster. Hours passed. Together they searched the old tunnels. The mine seemed endless. Dark passageways twisted deep into the mountain. Some collapsed. Others disappeared into darkness. Finally they reached a larger chamber. Abigail froze. Wooden crates filled the room. Hundreds of them. What is this place? Ethan moved closer. Then his expression changed. This wasn't here years ago. He pried open a crate. Inside sat stacks of documents. Gold records. Account books. Contracts. Abigail's eyes widened. Victor's secret records. Evidence. Years of evidence. The room wasn't just a storage area. It was a hidden archive. Proof of every crime Victor had committed. Ethan opened another crate. Inside were bags of gold coins. Thousands of dollars worth. Money stolen from miners and investors. Abigail stared in disbelief. My father was right. Ethan nodded. He discovered everything. Suddenly a slow clap echoed through the cavern. Both turned instantly. Victor Blackwood stepped from the shadows. Holding a revolver. 3 armed men stood beside him. His expensive coat was covered in dust. But his smile remained. Cold. Cruel. Dangerous. I was hoping the collapse buried you both. Abigail felt her blood run cold. Victor laughed softly. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. Ethan stepped protectively in front of her. Victor pointed the revolver. You always were a problem, Wolf. The mountain man's voice remained calm. This ends tonight. Victor smiled. No. His eyes darkened. It ends with both of you disappearing forever. Abigail's heart pounded. Victor slowly approached. You know, Abigail. His voice dripped with arrogance. Your father caused all of this. Tears filled her eyes. You murdered him. Victor shrugged. He should have minded his own business. The words echoed through the cavern. Even Victor's own men looked uncomfortable. Abigail clenched her fists. You killed him. Victor smiled. He left me no choice. Rage exploded inside her. 6 years of grief. 6 years of unanswered questions. 6 years of pain. All because of him. Suddenly a voice shouted from behind. Sheriff. Gunfire erupted. Boom. 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 Sheriff Collins and several deputies charged into the chamber from a side tunnel. Chaos exploded instantly. Victor's men opened fire. Deputies returned fire. The cavern became a battlefield. Ethan grabbed Abigail's hand. Stay down. They ducked behind a crate as bullets struck the wooden walls. Splinters flew everywhere. The battle lasted only seconds. But it felt like forever. Finally silence returned. One by one Victor's men surrendered. The deputies surrounded them. Sheriff Collins stepped forward. Victor Blackwood. Victor slowly lowered his weapon. For the first time in years, fear appeared on his face. But Victor wasn't finished. Without warning, he grabbed Abigail. The revolver pressed against her head. Everyone froze. Back away. The deputies stopped instantly. Ethan's jaw tightened. Victor dragged Abigail toward the edge of an old mining shaft. A deep pit disappeared into darkness below. One wrong step meant death. Victor laughed nervously. If I go down, she's coming with me. Abigail struggled, but his grip remained firm. The sheriff couldn't shoot. Neither could the deputies. The risk was too great. Then Ethan stepped forward. Alone. Unarmed. Let her go. Victor sneered. Or what? Ethan continued walking. Slowly. Steadily. Every person in the cavern held their breath. You're not leaving here, Ethan said. Victor's hand trembled. You think I'm afraid of you? Ethan's eyes never left him. No. He took another step. I think you're afraid of the truth. Victor's expression changed. For a split second. A moment of hesitation. And that was enough. Abigail stomped hard on Victor's foot. He cried out. His grip loosened. Ethan lunged. The 2 men crashed into the ground. The revolver flew across the cavern. Victor scrambled toward the edge of the shaft, trying to escape, but the loose earth beneath him gave way. His eyes widened. Suddenly he slipped, falling backward into the darkness. His scream echoed through the mine, then vanished forever. Silence followed. Complete silence. Victor Blackwood was gone. Several hours later, rescue crews finally cleared a path out of the mine. The first light of dawn illuminated the mountains. Fresh snow sparkled across the valley. For the first time in years, Silver Creek was free. Victor's crimes were exposed. The stolen records were recovered. The truth about Thomas Harper's death would finally be known. As the townspeople gathered outside, Sheriff Collins approached Abigail. He handed her a small leather pouch. "What is this?" The sheriff smiled. "It belonged to your father." Abigail carefully opened it. Inside was a folded letter. One she had never seen before. Her father's handwriting covered the page. At the very top were the words, "To Abigail, if Ethan Wolfe ever finds you." Abigail's eyes widened. Slowly she looked toward Ethan. The mountain man seemed just as surprised. What could her father have known all those years ago? And why had he written a letter specifically about Ethan? The letter that changed everything. Victor Blackwood is finally gone. His crimes have been exposed, and the truth about Thomas Harper's death has come to light. But before his death, Abigail's father left behind a mysterious letter addressed specifically to her, one that mentions Ethan Wolfe. The morning sun climbed slowly above the snowy mountains. Silver Creek was alive with activity. Deputies carried evidence from the mine. Workers helped clear debris. Townspeople gathered in small groups, discussing the shocking events of the previous night. Yet Abigail noticed none of it. Her attention remained fixed on the letter in her hands. The letter her father had written years ago. The letter meant only for her. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the worn paper. Ethan stood nearby, silent, respectful, giving her space. Abigail took a deep breath and began reading. "My dearest Abigail, if you are reading this, then I am no longer here to protect you. There is something I need you to know. About Ethan Wolfe. You may hear stories about him one day. Some true, many false. But never judge him by his scars. A person's face tells you nothing about their heart. When everyone else turned away from Ethan, I saw the kind of man he truly was. Brave, honest, loyal, the kind of man who risks everything for people he loves. If fate ever places Ethan in your life, trust him. Because I trust him with mine. And with yours. Love always. Dad." Tears streamed down Abigail's cheeks. She pressed the letter against her chest. For years she had missed her father. Missed his guidance, his wisdom, and somehow, even after death, he had found a way to protect her. Slowly she looked toward Ethan. The mountain man stared at the snow-covered ground, clearly uncomfortable with praise. Abigail smiled through her tears. "My father believed in you." Ethan's eyes softened. "He believed in everyone." "No." She shook her head. "He trusted you." For a moment neither spoke. Then Ethan quietly replied, "I spent years trying to deserve that trust." Several days later, Silver Creek began changing. Without Victor's influence, the town felt different. Lighter. Freer. The stolen money recovered from the mine was returned to the families who had lost everything. Sheriff Collins reopened old investigations. Several corrupt officials were arrested. For the first time in years, hope returned. Emma's health also improved. The medicine Ethan purchased finally began working. Color returned to her cheeks. Her laughter filled rooms again. And every time Abigail heard it, she silently thanked Ethan. One afternoon, Abigail stood outside the cabin watching snow fall from the pine trees. Winter was slowly fading. The mountains looked beautiful beneath the afternoon sun. She heard footsteps behind her. Ethan. He carried an axe over one shoulder. Fresh wood chips covered his coat. "You're smiling." Abigail laughed softly. "Maybe. Must be serious." She rolled her eyes. The mountain man smiled. A real smile. One she was seeing more often lately. And every time she saw it, she noticed something. His scars seemed smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. The scars no longer defined him. They never should have. That evening Emma surprised them both. The three sat around the dinner table when Emma suddenly cleared her throat. "I have a question." Abigail immediately looked suspicious. That tone usually meant trouble. Emma grinned. "When are you two going to stop pretending?" Abigail nearly choked on her tea. "Pretending what?" Emma pointed between them. "That." Ethan looked equally confused. Emma sighed dramatically. "You look at each other like characters from one of my romance novels." Abigail turned bright red. "Emma." The younger girl laughed. Even Ethan struggled not to smile. For the first time in years, the cabin felt like a home. Not a shelter. Not a refuge. A home. As spring approached, Abigail found herself spending more time with Ethan. They repaired fences together, gathered supplies together, shared meals, shared stories, shared silence. The easy kind of silence. The kind that exists only between people who trust one another. One evening they sat beside the river below the mountain. The snowmelt rushed across the rocks. The setting sun painted the sky gold. Neither spoke for several minutes. Then Ethan broke the silence. Do you regret it? Abigail looked at him. Regret what? The marriage. His voice carried genuine concern. Abigail thought carefully. Months earlier her answer would have been obvious. Now it wasn't. She smiled softly. No. Ethan seemed surprised. No. She shook her head. Not anymore. The mountain man looked away, trying unsuccessfully to hide his smile. Weeks later, another surprise arrived. Sheriff Collins rode up the mountain carrying important documents. He found Abigail and Ethan working near the barn. You might want to see this. Abigail accepted the papers. Her eyes widened immediately. Victor Blackwood's remaining properties had been seized, including land he illegally stole from dozens of families. Among those properties was the Harper family farm. Their old farm. The one her father had worked his entire life. The one Victor had taken after his death. Tears filled Abigail's eyes. It's ours again. The sheriff smiled. It belongs to the Harpers. Emma nearly tackled Abigail with excitement. For the first time since their father's death, they had their home back. That night the family celebrated. Laughter echoed throughout the cabin. The future finally looked bright. Yet later, after everyone had gone to bed, Abigail stepped outside alone. The stars filled the sky. Countless lights above the mountains. A familiar sound came from behind her. Ethan. He joined her on the porch. Neither spoke at first. Then Abigail looked at him. I used to be afraid of you. Ethan chuckled. I know. I was wrong. He shrugged. You had reasons. Abigail stepped closer. No. Her voice softened. I believed stories instead of the truth. The mountain breeze stirred around them. For a moment neither moved. Then Ethan quietly asked. And now? Abigail smiled. Now I know who you really are. Their eyes met. And for the first time, neither looked away. Slowly, carefully, Ethan reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed his fingers. A simple gesture. Yet it meant everything. Because what began as a forced marriage had become something neither of them expected. Something real. Something worth fighting for. The stranger from the storm. When the truth about Ethan's past finally surfaced in Silver Creek, Abigail realized she might be standing beside either a broken man, or a man who was never truly free. The night sky over Silver Creek was darker than usual, as if the mountains themselves were holding their breath. A cold wind swept through the wooden streets, rattling windows and carrying whispers of an approaching storm. Inside the small cabin on the edge of Ethan's land, Abigail stood near the fire, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, but her mind was far from calm. Ethan was outside, checking the horses. And that's when it happened. A knock. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks on the door. Abigail froze. No one visited this late. Especially not in weather like this. She slowly approached the door, hesitating before opening it just a crack. And then she saw him. A man in his mid-40s stood there, soaked from the rain, his coat worn, his eyes sharp like broken glass. There was something unsettling about the way he looked at her, like he already knew her name. Are you Abigail? He asked quietly. Her grip tightened on the door. Yes. Who are you? The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced past her, toward the inside of the cabin, as if searching for Ethan. I need to speak to him, he said. Abigail's heart dropped slightly. He's not here right now. That's when the man stepped closer. My name is Victor Hale, he said. And I've come to talk about Ethan Blackwood. The name hit the air like a thunderclap. Abigail felt a strange chill crawl up her spine. She had heard Ethan's last name before, but only in fragments. Only when he thought she wasn't listening. And never with explanation. Before she could respond, footsteps approached behind her. Ethan had returned. The moment his eyes landed on Victor, everything changed. His entire body stiffened, like a man seeing a ghost he had buried long ago. You shouldn't be here, Ethan said coldly. Victor smirked faintly. But I am. Silence fell between them, heavy, dangerous. Abigail looked between the two men. Ethan? Who is he? Ethan didn't answer immediately. That hesitation said more than words ever could. Finally, he stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Abigail without even realizing it. Go inside, he said quietly to her. But Abigail didn't move. No. That single word surprised him. I said go inside, Ethan repeated, firmer this time. But Victor interrupted. She deserves to hear this, Victor said. After all, she's living with a man who doesn't even use his real identity anymore. Abigail's breath caught. What does he mean? She whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Victor pulled something from his coat, a folded document, old and worn. Ethan Blackwood, he said slowly, doesn't exist. Abigail felt her world tilt. What? She whispered again. Victor continued. The man you know, used to be Ethan Cole. And 15 years ago, he walked away from a burned-down mining operation that killed 7 men. The fire crackled loudly inside the cabin, but suddenly everything felt silent. Ethan's eyes darkened. That's enough. But Victor wasn't finished. He didn't just walk away, Victor said. He was the foreman, the one in charge. And when the investigation began, he disappeared. Abigail turned slowly toward Ethan. Her voice trembled. Is that true? Ethan didn't speak. And that silence broke her more than any confession could have. The wind outside howled louder, as if the mountains themselves were reacting. Finally, Ethan exhaled deeply. Yes, he said. One word. Heavy. Honest. Destructive. Abigail stepped back slightly. So everything, your name, your past, you lied to me. I didn't lie, Ethan said firmly, stepping closer. I left. Victor laughed bitterly. You ran. Ethan's eyes flashed with anger, but he controlled it. I saved lives, Ethan said sharply. That mine was collapsing. I ordered evacuation. They ignored me. I tried to get everyone out. Victor shook his head. And yet they died. Silence again. Abigail felt like she couldn't breathe. Her mind raced with questions, confusion, pain. Ethan turned toward her, his voice softer now. I never told you because I didn't want that life to touch you. Her eyes filled with tears. But it already has. A long pause. Then Victor spoke again, but this time, his voice changed. Lower. More calculated. There's something else you should know, Ethan. Ethan narrowed his eyes. What now? Victor pulled out another paper. This isn't just about the mine. He looked at Abigail. It's about your sister. Abigail froze completely. What did you say? Victor smiled faintly. The mine didn't just collapse. It was insured fraudulently. And your sister's medical bills, the funding she received years ago. He tapped the paper. It came from the same company Ethan tried to run from. Abigail felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. Ethan stepped forward quickly. That has nothing to do with me anymore. But Victor raised a hand. Oh, it does. He looked at Abigail again. Because if the truth comes out fully, the money she received could be reclaimed. Legally. Abigail's voice broke. No. The storm outside intensified. Ethan stood frozen for the first time. Not as a scarred mountain man. Not as a protector. But as a man realizing the past he buried, had finally found the woman he tried to protect. And it had come to take everything. The choice between truth and survival. Abigail stood between love and survival, because the truth about Ethan wasn't just dangerous, it was about to destroy her sister's only chance at life. The storm over Silver Creek had not passed. It had only grown darker. Rain slammed against the cabin windows like an accusation that refused to stop. Inside, silence was suffocating. Victor Hale stood near the door like a man who had already won the war, he just hadn't collected the victory yet. Abigail felt her hands trembling. Her sister's name echoed in her mind like a fragile heartbeat. Ethan stood a few feet away, still as stone, but his eyes carried something deeper now, fear. Not for himself. For her. For what she was about to lose. Victor broke the silence first. You have 2 choices, he said calmly. Keep protecting Ethan's secret, and let your sister lose everything. Or tell the truth, and maybe, just maybe, save her future. Abigail's throat tightened. You're threatening me. Victor tilted his head. I'm offering you reality. Ethan stepped forward sharply. This has nothing to do with her. Victor's eyes snapped to him. It has everything to do with you. A heavy silence followed. Abigail slowly turned toward Ethan. Her voice was barely audible. Is what he said true, about the money? Ethan didn't answer immediately, and that delay shattered her trust further than words ever could. Finally, he spoke. Not the way he's saying it. Victor let out a quiet laugh. Even now, you're still choosing half-truths. Ethan's jaw tightened. I worked for that company, Ethan admitted. Years ago. Before the mine disaster. I didn't know what they were doing behind closed doors. Abigail's eyes filled with tears. But you ran when things went wrong. Ethan flinched. Yes. The honesty hung in the air, painful and unpolished. Victor stepped closer. And now the past has a price. One your new life cannot afford. Abigail suddenly turned away, walking toward the window. Her reflection stared back at her, confused, torn, breaking slowly. I just wanted my sister to live, she whispered. Her voice cracked. That's all I ever wanted. For a moment, even Victor seemed quiet. But Ethan's voice softened. Then let me fix it. Abigail turned sharply. You already hid things from me. Why should I trust you now? Ethan took a step closer, careful this time. Because I didn't hide it to hurt you. His voice lowered. I hid it because every time I try to face my past, someone gets hurt. A flicker of pain crossed his face. I've already lost people because of what I did, or what I failed to stop. I couldn't let you become part of that. Abigail stared at him. For the first time, she saw something beyond the scars. Regret. Deep. Endless. Victor sighed impatiently. This emotional storytelling won't change the facts. He placed the document on the table. Sign this acknowledgement. Confirm Ethan Cole's identity and past involvement. That's all it takes for the investigation to reopen. Abigail looked at the paper. Her hands trembled. If I sign that, she whispered, what happens to my sister's funding? Victor replied without hesitation. It will be reviewed. Possibly revoked. The room spun. Abigail felt trapped between two collapsing worlds. Ethan stepped forward quickly. Don't sign anything. Victor smirked. Or what? You'll disappear again. That word hit Ethan like a blade. Abigail looked at him. Is that what you're going to do? Run again? Ethan froze. For the first time, he had no immediate answer. Outside, thunder cracked violently. The silence that followed felt like a decision waiting to be made. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice steady, but heavy. I'm not running this time. He turned toward Abigail fully. I'll face it. All of it. But I won't let you lose your sister because of me. Abigail's eyes widened. What are you saying? Ethan looked at the document on the table. I'll turn myself in. The words hit like falling stone. Victor's expression shifted, satisfaction flickering in his eyes. But Abigail shook her head immediately. No, you don't understand. If you do that, everything collapses. Ethan stepped closer, gently taking the document before anyone could stop him. Maybe it should collapse, he said quietly. Maybe I've been running long enough. Abigail's voice broke. But I can't lose you. That sentence changed the air completely. Ethan looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, the scarred mountain man didn't look like someone hardened by survival. He looked like someone who finally found something worth losing everything for. His voice softened. You won't lose me, he said. Not like that. He turned toward Victor. I'll deal with this. But not on your terms. Victor's smile faded slightly. You don't have any terms left. Ethan walked to the door. Rain rushed in as he opened it. Then he paused. Without turning back, he said, if I don't come back, make sure she's safe. Abigail stepped forward. Ethan. But he was already gone. The door slammed shut, and the cabin fell into a silence heavier than the storm outside. Victor looked at Abigail one last time. This is what truth does, he said softly. It takes everything. Then he walked out into the rain as well, leaving Abigail alone, with a love she couldn't save, and a future she couldn't control. The truth buried in ashes. Abigail thought Ethan was the danger, until one hidden clue revealed the mine disaster was never an accident, and Victor might not be telling the truth at all. The cabin felt emptier than ever after Ethan left. The fire still burned, but it no longer gave warmth. It only reminded Abigail of what had just been lost. Outside, the storm refused to calm, as if Silver Creek itself was mourning a decision that could not be undone. Victor had left minutes after Ethan. But his words stayed behind like poison in the air. Abigail sat near the table, staring at the document he had left behind. Her sister's name kept echoing in her mind. Funding revoked. Investigation collapse. Each word felt like a knife. Then something caught her eye. A small detail at the bottom of the paper. A stamp. Not from a government office. Not from a mining authority. It was a private corporate seal. Blackridge Holdings. Abigail frowned. She had heard that name before, somewhere in passing conversations Ethan used to avoid finishing. Her fingers tightened around the paper. Something about it felt wrong. Very wrong. She stood up quickly and went to the small wooden drawer where Ethan kept old files, things he never talked about, things he thought no one would touch. Her hands moved faster now, driven by panic and instinct. Inside the drawer, she found it. A worn folder. Dusty. Hidden beneath layers of old maps and ranch documents. On the front, a faded label. Blackridge. Internal Incident Report. Her breath caught. She opened it. And what she saw made her step back instantly. Photos. Not of an accident site. But of controlled demolition points inside the mine tunnels. Abigail's heart started pounding. No, she whispered. She flipped the pages faster. Engineering reports. Structural notes. Timelines. And then, a signed authorization. Not Ethan Cole. Not any foreman. It was signed by Victor Hale, operations consultant. Abigail's hands went cold. The room seemed to tilt. This can't be real, she said aloud. But the documents didn't lie. The mine hadn't collapsed because of negligence. It had been compromised. Deliberately. A staged disaster. Her breath grew shallow. And suddenly, Ethan's words from earlier came rushing back. I ordered evacuation. They ignored me. She froze. What if he wasn't running from guilt? What if he was running from being silenced? A loud crack of thunder shook the cabin. Abigail grabbed the folder and rushed to the lantern light, scanning every detail. Then she saw it. A final memo. Short. Direct. If Cole refuses cooperation, initiate containment protocol. Ensure no witnesses confirm corporate breach. Signed again. Victor Hale. Abigail's knees nearly gave out. It was never an accident, she whispered. It was a setup. And Ethan wasn't the criminal. He was the obstacle. Outside, hoofbeats suddenly echoed through the rain. Abigail rushed to the window. A rider. Coming fast. She recognized the silhouette instantly. Ethan. But something was wrong. He wasn't riding like a man returning from surrender. He was riding like a man being chased. Behind him, two more riders emerged from the storm. Abigail's eyes widened. No, Ethan. She ran toward the door. But before she could open it, a sharp knock. Not Ethan. Different. Slower. Deliberate. Victor's voice came from outside. Calm. Almost satisfied. Abigail, we need to talk again. She looked at the folder in her hands. Then at the approaching chaos outside. And for the first time, she understood the truth wasn't just dangerous. It was being hunted. The chase through Silver Creek. As Ethan is hunted through the storm, Abigail realizes Victor isn't just hiding the truth, he's erasing anyone who can expose it. The rain had turned into a violent curtain over Silver Creek. Thunder rolled low across the mountains, shaking the ground like something ancient was waking up beneath them. Abigail stood frozen at the door. Victor's voice repeated outside, calm but sharper now. Abigail, open the door. Behind her, the folder lay open on the table, proof that everything she believed had been twisted. Ethan wasn't the accused. He was the target. Another knock came. Harder this time. Abigail stepped back. No, she whispered to herself. No more lies. She grabbed the lantern and moved toward the back window instead. Through the rain-streaked glass, she saw movement in the distance. Ethan on horseback. But he wasn't alone anymore. Two riders followed closely behind him, fast, trained, coordinated. Not hunters. Professionals. Abigail's heart slammed against her chest. Ethan, she breathed. Outside, Victor's voice changed slightly. I know you've seen the files, he said. You always were curious. Abigail turned toward the door, anger rising now through her fear. You did this, she shouted. You destroyed that mine. A pause. Then Victor chuckled softly. It was a controlled operation. Necessary losses for a larger outcome. Her grip tightened around the lantern. You killed people. Another pause, longer this time. No, Victor replied calmly. I eliminated a liability. A cold silence fell. Then, hoofbeats. Fast. Closer. Abigail rushed back to the window. Ethan was nearing the cabin now, rain slicing across his face, his horse struggling on the muddy ground. Behind him, the two riders closed in. One pulled a rope. A trap. Ethan, move. Abigail screamed, though she knew he couldn't hear her. At the last second, Ethan swerved sharply off the main path, sliding into the forest edge. The rope snapped through empty air. The pursuers didn't slow. They followed him into the trees. Abigail's breathing became uneven. She grabbed the coat hanging near the door. And for the first time, she made a choice not based on fear, but truth. She opened the door. The storm hit her instantly. Cold, violent, relentless. Victor stood just a few feet away under the rain, completely calm. You shouldn't have done that, he said. Abigail stepped out anyway. I read everything, she said. Blackridge. The explosion. The signatures. You planned it. Victor tilted his head slightly. Planned is a strong word. You used Ethan, she snapped. And when he refused, you blamed him. Victor sighed as if disappointed. He was never meant to survive that mine operation once he saw too much. Abigail felt her stomach drop. So the survivors, the dead, all of it. A cost, Victor interrupted. Her voice broke with anger. You're a monster. Victor looked at her for a long moment. No, he said quietly. I'm the one who keeps order. A sudden crashing sound erupted from the forest. Ethan burst through the trees on horseback, barely holding control. One rider was still behind him. Too close. Abigail screamed, Ethan. Ethan looked up. Their eyes met for a split second. And everything slowed. Then the rider behind him raised a weapon. A shot cracked through the storm. Ethan's horse reared violently. He was thrown forward, straight toward the ground. Abigail ran instinctively. But Victor grabbed her arm. Stay where you are, he said firmly. She struggled. Let me go. In the chaos, Ethan hit the muddy ground hard, rolling once before forcing himself up. The second rider closed in. But Ethan was faster. He grabbed a fallen branch and struck the man's horse, sending it off balance. The rider crashed into the ground. Ethan didn't stop. He turned toward the last attacker. And froze. The man removed his hood. And Ethan's expression changed instantly. Shock. Recognition. Pain. Marcus. Ethan whispered. Abigail saw it. This wasn't just pursuit. It was betrayal. Victor noticed too, and smiled slightly. So you remember him, Victor said. Ethan stood frozen in the rain, breathing heavily. Marcus stepped forward slowly. You shouldn't have come back, Ethan, he said. Abigail's voice cut through the storm. Ethan, run. But Ethan didn't move, because now he understood something far worse than being hunted. He had been betrayed from inside his own past. And the storm above Silver Creek only grew louder. As everything began to collapse again. The betrayal beneath the mountain. Ethan finally faces the man who betrayed him, but the real shock isn't the attack, it's what Victor reveals about Abigail's sister that turns everything into a trap. The rain didn't slow. It fell harder, like the sky itself was trying to erase what was happening in Silver Creek. Ethan stood in the mud, breathing heavily, water dripping from his hair and scars, eyes locked on Marcus. For a moment, neither of them moved. Just memory between them. Then Marcus spoke, quietly. You should have stayed gone. Ethan's jaw tightened. I trusted you. Marcus gave a bitter smile. That was your mistake. Behind them, Victor watched everything unfold with calm satisfaction, as if this moment had already been written long ago. Abigail struggled in his grip. Let me go, she shouted. This isn't justice, this is execution. Victor didn't even look at her. It's correction, he said simply. Ethan took a slow step forward. Why? He asked Marcus. We survived that mine together. Marcus's eyes flickered, but only for a second. Then hardened again. Some of us didn't survive it the same way, he said. Thunder cracked violently overhead. Abigail's heart pounded. Ethan shook his head slowly. You were there when I ordered evacuation. You saw the structural collapse starting. You agreed we needed to shut it down. Marcus looked away for a fraction of a second. That's not what the report says. Ethan froze. Victor's voice cut in smoothly. Reports can be rewritten, he said. Ethan turned sharply toward him. What did you do? Victor finally smiled. Not what I did, he corrected. What I preserved. Abigail's eyes widened. You forged it, she whispered. Victor glanced at her. I protected the truth that benefits stability. Ethan's fists tightened. You killed those men, Ethan said coldly. And then erased anyone who knew otherwise. Victor's expression remained calm. Casualties occur in progress, he replied. Marcus stepped forward slightly, gripping something under his coat. A weapon. But his hand trembled. Abigail saw it. He wasn't fully in control. Something about him wasn't clean. Ethan noticed too. You're not doing this because you believe him, Ethan said quietly. You're doing it because you're trapped. Marcus didn't answer. A long silence stretched between them. Then Marcus finally said, almost broken. They told me my sister's medical care depended on cooperation. Abigail's breath stopped. Ethan's expression changed instantly. You were blackmailed. Marcus looked down. I didn't have a choice. Victor nodded slowly as if confirming a fact. Everyone has a price, he said. Abigail's voice shook with rage. You're using sick people, families, lives, this is disgusting. Victor finally turned toward her fully. And yet you still stand here arguing instead of running. That hit harder than she expected. Because he was right. But then, a sound came from the trees. A distant shout. Then another. Victor's calm expression shifted slightly for the first time. Ethan noticed immediately. What is it? Ethan demanded. Victor didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the forest line. More riders were coming. But not his. Not Marcus's. Different. Unmarked. Abigail saw them too. And in that moment, Victor finally loosened his grip slightly. Not fear. Adjustment. Like something unexpected had entered his plan. Ethan stepped closer to Marcus. This isn't over, Ethan said. You still have a choice. Marcus's eyes flickered again. Then, slowly, he lowered the weapon. A silent shift. A crack in the betrayal. But before anything else could happen, Victor spoke softly. Bring her in. Abigail turned sharply. What? Two figures emerged from the trees behind the cabin. And between them, a young woman. Weak. Confused. Barely able to stand. Abigail's blood turned cold. No. Victor's voice was calm. Your sister's condition has worsened, he said. She needs immediate care. Abigail's entire world collapsed into that moment. Her sister. Here. In the storm. Ethan stepped forward instantly. This is your leverage. Victor didn't deny it. I prefer to call it motivation. Abigail's voice broke. You brought her here, into this. Victor looked at her calmly. You were never going to choose correctly unless I gave you something worth choosing for. Ethan's expression hardened. This ends now. But Victor shook his head. No, he said quietly. Now it begins properly. The wind roared across Silver Creek. Marcus stood frozen. Ethan stood ready. Abigail stood shattered between truth and survival. And Victor finally revealed the final layer of his plan. Because the mine disaster was never the end of his operation. It was only the beginning of the one thing he truly wanted. Control over everyone who survived it. Breaking the chain of control. When Victor forces Abigail's sister into the center of the storm, Ethan realizes the only way to win is to stop playing by Victor's rules completely. The rain had not stopped. It had turned into something heavier now, like the sky itself was pressing down on Silver Creek, trying to bury every secret under mud and thunder. Abigail stood frozen. Her sister was here, weak, shaking, barely able to stand between two men holding her upright. Emily, Abigail whispered. Her sister lifted her head slightly. Confused, scared. Abby, she murmured. That single sound shattered something inside Abigail. Victor watched quietly, like a man observing a calculation finally reaching its final step. Ethan stepped forward immediately. This is over, he said coldly. Victor didn't move. No, he replied. Now you're finally in the correct position. Marcus stood a few steps behind Ethan, weapon lowered, but his face conflicted, torn between loyalty and guilt. Ethan didn't look away from Victor. You've dragged innocent people into this, Ethan said. There's no justification left. Victor's tone remained calm. There never needed to be justification, he said. Only control. Abigail's voice shook with rage. Let her go. Victor tilted his head slightly. Then cooperate. A silence dropped over everything. Even the wind seemed to pause for a moment. Ethan slowly looked at Abigail. Then at Emily. Then back at Victor. And something in his expression changed. Not fear. Not anger. Clarity. He took a step forward. You think this is leverage, Ethan said quietly. But you made a mistake. Victor narrowed his eyes slightly. Oh, Ethan nodded toward Marcus. You brought someone here who knows your system. Marcus tensed. Victor glanced at him briefly. For the first time, uncertainty flickered. Ethan continued. And you brought Abigail's sister, without knowing her condition, is exactly why your plan fails. Victor's expression hardened. What are you talking about? Abigail looked at Ethan sharply. But Ethan wasn't finished. He turned slightly toward Emily. Your sister's illness, it's real, he said gently to Abigail. But the funding, the timing, the company records, he looked back at Victor. They don't match standard protocol for medical grants. Victor's jaw tightened slightly. Ethan stepped closer. You didn't bring her here to control us, he said. You brought her here because you're afraid she might talk. A shift in the air. Marcus looked up. Abigail frowned. What do you mean? She asked. Ethan's voice lowered. Emily was inside Blackridge Medical Trials, he said. Not just funding programs. Abigail froze. Victor didn't respond. That silence was enough. Ethan continued. And if she remembers what was done to her during those trials, she becomes evidence. Emily suddenly shook her head weakly. I don't remember everything, she whispered. Victor stepped forward sharply. Enough. For the first time, his calm cracked. Just slightly. But Ethan saw it, and that was all he needed. You're not in control anymore, Ethan said. Victor's eyes darkened. You still think this is a game you can outthink? Ethan shook his head. No, he said. I think it's a system I can expose. A distant rumble echoed through the mountains. Marcus slowly lifted his head. Ethan, he said quietly. He has backup teams coming. Victor didn't deny it. Abigail's fear returned instantly. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he looked at Marcus. You ready to fix what you helped break? Marcus hesitated. Then slowly, he nodded. A turning point. Victor noticed immediately. That won't matter, he said coldly. You're surrounded. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then said something unexpected. Not yet. A pause. Victor frowned slightly. And then, a distant whistle sounded through the storm. 3 sharp signals. From the ridge above Silver Creek. Marcus's eyes widened. Now, he whispered. Suddenly, lights flared on the mountain edge. Not Victor's men. Not Blackridge. Local trackers. Ranch guards. Men from Ethan's land. Abigail stared upward. Ethan had planned this. Victor's calm finally cracked. You called them, Victor said sharply. Ethan nodded. I stopped reacting to you, he said. I started preparing for you. The balance shifted instantly. Victor's men in the forest hesitated. Marcus stepped beside Ethan now, fully committed. Abigail pulled her sister closer. For the first time, Victor was not the one controlling the field. But his eyes didn't show panic. Only calculation. Because men like him don't lose control easily. They adapt. Slowly, he reached into his coat. And said quietly, then we escalate. The last stand at Silver Creek. When Victor triggers his final plan, Silver Creek becomes a war zone, and Ethan realizes the only way to end it is to risk everything, including himself. The mountains around Silver Creek roared with wind and rain. But now, something else joined the storm. Sirens. Not loud at first, just distant echoes rolling through the valley like a warning that had arrived too late. Victor stood in the center of it all, completely still. And smiling. That's your plan, Ethan shouted over the chaos. Turn this place into a battlefield. Victor didn't look at him. This place already was a battlefield, he said calmly. You just didn't see it until now. Abigail held Emily tightly behind Ethan's position, shielding her from the rising panic. Marcus stood beside Ethan, tense, scanning the ridge. They're moving in, Marcus said. Victor's backup units, 2 directions. Ethan nodded once. He wasn't surprised anymore. Victor always had another layer, another door, another trap. But this time, Ethan did too. Victor raised his hand slightly. And from the forest line, lights appeared. Men in tactical gear. Fast, organized, professional. They formed a wide circle around the clearing. Abigail's breath caught. We're surrounded, she whispered. Victor finally turned toward them. No, he corrected softly. You are contained. Ethan stepped forward. This ends now, Victor. Victor's eyes locked onto him. It already ended the moment you refused to disappear. A tense silence fell. Then Victor spoke again, calm, almost gentle. I offered you freedom, Ethan. A clean exit. You refused it. Ethan shook his head. You never offered freedom, he said. Only silence. Victor sighed as if disappointed. Silence is freedom from chaos. Marcus suddenly stepped forward. Stop talking like this is philosophy, he snapped. People are going to die because of you. Victor glanced at Marcus. You were supposed to ensure Ethan stayed compliant, he said. Instead, you failed your assignment. Marcus's jaw tightened. I chose wrong before, he said. Not again. That hit differently. Victor studied him for a moment. Then nodded slightly. Interesting, he said. Rebellion phase. He lifted his hand again. And the units began closing in. Abigail pulled Emily backward. Ethan, what do we do? She cried. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Because he was watching Victor carefully now. Not the soldiers. Not the storm. Victor. And then Ethan noticed something. Victor wasn't trying to escape. He wasn't trying to win the fight. He was trying to erase evidence in real time. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. You're not here to survive this, Ethan said slowly. Victor looked at him. No, he replied. I'm here to reset it. A chill ran through Ethan's mind. Reset what? Victor's expression darkened. Everything tied to Blackridge. A distant explosion echoed from the mountain ridge. Abigail flinched. Marcus turned sharply. Detonation charges, he said. Ethan's face tightened. You planted explosives across the valley. Victor nodded. Containment protocol, he said calmly. If I cannot control the narrative, I remove the infrastructure that holds it. Abigail whispered in horror. You're going to destroy the entire mine site. Victor corrected softly. The evidence. Ethan finally understood. This wasn't a capture mission anymore. It was a wipeout. A total erase of the past. Including anyone standing in it. Marcus grabbed Ethan's arm. We have maybe minutes, he said. Ethan looked at Abigail and Emily. Then back at Victor. And made a decision. Get them out, Ethan told Marcus. Marcus shook his head. I'm not leaving you. Ethan grabbed him firmly. You already chose once, Ethan said. Don't waste it. A beat. Marcus hesitated. Then nodded. He turned, grabbing Emily carefully. Come on, he said to Abigail. But Abigail didn't move immediately. She looked at Ethan. No, she said firmly. I'm not leaving you here. Ethan stepped closer, rain dripping from his face. This isn't about me anymore, he said quietly. It never was. Abigail shook her head. I won't lose you after everything. Ethan's voice softened. You won't lose me, he said. You'll find the truth. Another explosion echoed closer now. Victor raised his hand again. Time is up, he said. The units advanced. Marcus pulled Abigail and Emily back toward the ridge escape path. Now, he shouted. Ethan turned toward Victor one last time. And walked forward. Alone. Victor watched him approach. No army, Victor said quietly. No leverage. Just you. Ethan stopped a few feet away. You made a mistake, Ethan said. Victor tilted his head slightly. Oh, Ethan nodded toward the valley. You built your system on fear. A pause. Ethan continued. But fear only works until someone stops being afraid. A silence stretched. Then Victor spoke softly. Then let's find out what remains. The storm reached its peak. Lightning split the sky above Silver Creek. And in that flash of light, Ethan moved. Not back. Forward. Straight into Victor's final line. The truth that survived the storm. In the heart of Silver Creek's collapse, Ethan and Victor face each other one last time, and the truth buried in the mine finally comes alive. Lightning split the sky like it was tearing the world open. Silver Creek was no longer just a valley. It was a collapsing memory. Explosions in the distance, men retreating through mud, and the mountain itself trembling under hidden charges. Ethan stood alone in the open ground. Rain streamed down his face, but his eyes didn't blink. Across from him, Victor remained calm. Too calm. Like a man watching a system he built finally reach its final sequence. Do you feel it? Victor asked quietly over the chaos. The end of something inevitable. Ethan shook his head. No, he said. The end of your control. A distant explosion shook the ridge again. Marcus's voice came faintly through the radio Ethan had dropped earlier. Evacuation route is open. Abigail and Emily are out. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because now it was just him and Victor. The past. And the truth. Victor stepped forward slightly. You really think exposing me changes anything? He asked. Ethan's voice was steady. It changes everything that follows. Victor gave a faint smile. You're still thinking like a man who believes systems care about truth. Ethan looked him directly in the eyes. No, he said. I think systems fall when enough people stop fearing them. A silence stretched. Then Victor's expression hardened slightly. You never understood the mine, he said. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand it better than you think. Victor tilted his head. Then tell me, he said. Why did I do it? Ethan didn't answer immediately. Rain fell harder. Then he spoke. Because Blackridge was failing, Ethan said. Your project needed a reason to collapse and rebuild under new funding. You used the mine as a controlled disaster. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. Ethan continued. But you didn't plan for survivors. A flicker. The first real crack in Victor's calm. Ethan stepped forward. You needed silence. I became the problem. Marcus was your solution. Abigail's sister, your insurance. Victor's voice lowered. You think you've figured it out? Ethan nodded. I know I have. Another explosion echoed. Closer now. The mountain was collapsing in sections. Victor looked around slowly. This place will be gone in minutes, he said. Along with everything you're trying to prove. Ethan shook his head. No, he said. Not everything. He reached into his jacket. And pulled out a small recording device. Victor's eyes narrowed. Ethan pressed play. And suddenly, voices. From inside the mine. Orders. Evacuation commands. Victor's voice. Clear. Cold. Authoritative. If Cole refuses compliance, proceed with containment. No witnesses. A second voice. Marcus's earlier testimony. A third. Engineers confirming structural tampering. Victor's expression finally shifted. Slightly. For the first time, uncertainty. You recorded this, Victor said slowly. Ethan nodded. From the beginning, he replied. When I realized you don't just erase people, you rewrite history. A violent tremor shook the ground. The mountain was collapsing faster now. Victor looked at the device. Then at Ethan. And something changed in his face. Not fear. Not panic. But acceptance. You still won't win, Victor said quietly. Ethan stepped closer. I already did, he replied. A pause. Then Victor did something unexpected. He laughed. Softly. Not mocking. Almost tired. You think this ends with me falling, he said. Ethan didn't respond. Victor looked toward the mountain. The system doesn't collapse with one man, he said. It adapts. It replaces. It continues. Ethan shook his head. Not if people know the truth. Victor turned back to him. And who will they believe? He asked. A man with scars and a story, or a system that feeds them stability? A distant roar. The final structural detonation triggered. The ground shook violently. Ethan stepped back slightly. Victor didn't move. Instead, he looked at Ethan one last time. You were never meant to survive that mine, he said quietly. Ethan replied softly. But I did. A long silence. Then Victor spoke again. Then you understand, he said. Survival always comes with a cost. And in that moment, Victor stepped backward. Not fleeing. Not escaping. Just letting go. As the ground beneath the ridge collapsed in a chain reaction, the mountain roared open like a wound finally exposed. Ethan rushed forward instinctively. But it was too late. Victor disappeared into the collapsing edge of Silver Creek. No scream. No final resistance. Just silence swallowed by rock and rain. Ethan stood at the edge, breathing heavily. The storm began to slow. Not immediately. But gradually. Like something inside the valley had finally stopped fighting. Epilogue. Days later. Silver Creek was quiet. Reconstruction had begun. Reports were filed. Names corrected. Truths slowly surfaced through official channels. Abigail stood near the rebuilt cabin. Emily was recovering. Marcus had surrendered testimony. And Ethan. Ethan stood at the ridge overlooking the mine site. Scarred. Still. But free. Abigail approached quietly. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said softly, "You didn't lose everything." Ethan looked at her. "No," he said. "I lost the part of me that was afraid to face it." A silence. Then Abigail stepped closer. "And Victor?" Ethan turned toward the valley. "Victor wasn't the beginning," he said. "He was just the proof that silence can be weaponized." A wind passed through the mountains. But this time, it didn't feel like a storm. It felt like an ending. Please friends spot my channel. Like, share, comment. Subscribe for more stories.